And we're live. Welcome to Bald&Balding. This is a beverage and a book. And today we are graced with the pleasure of having KT Hunter and her husband, TD Raufson. Welcome to the show. And wait, everybody, I'm going to remember for the first time ever to say, please like and subscribe.
Yay!
Yes. All right. This is already a success. Anyway, enough silliness. KT,
Yes.
tell us about your book or your beverage, your choice.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the beverage. I've got a mocha combination, instant coffee and homemade hot chocolate in my beloved Loki mug because I'm a huge Loki fan.
Okay.
And my book is by a fellow, I wouldn't say indie author. I think he started out that way, but this book is now published by Tor. But he's a gentleman that I met at Liberty Con a few years ago by the name of D.B. Jackson. And he teaches at Sewanee. And he wrote this lovely book called Thief Taker. And being a big steampunk fan, this one really appealed to me, even though it's about 100 years earlier than steampunk would normally be. It takes place around pre-revolutionary America and involves magic.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was trying to do something there and I pushed buttons and bad things happen.
Oh, I thought that was me, Ro.
I won't do it again.
It's okay. But it involves magic in colonial pre-Revolutionary War America. And it's a very intriguing mystery. I really enjoyed it. I've read it several times, and I believe there are additional books in the series which I've not been able to read yet. But it's called Thief Taker. The term being taken from a time before we had organized police forces. If somebody experienced a theft, they would hire a thief taker to hunt down, like a private eye, in a way, hunt down and find the thief. So it's really good. Met the author, very nice guy. D.B. Jackson's a great writer, and I highly recommend it.
Awesome. TD, what about you? Do you have a book and a beverage?
I do. So my beverage in my Chief Warrant Officer cup is a tea Earl Grey hot. So anyone who is a Star Trek fan will recognize that. It really is Earl Grey because I do like Earl Grey, unlike Patrick Stewart, who prefers his Diet Coke. But it is in my very warm insulated mug. So it'll be hot through the whole show. And I enjoy a good Earl Grey when I'm sitting down and reading. So the book is, it's an older book from an indie author. His name is Mackenzie Brown. He's English, and he's writing a book. This book is called Lost Boys. So I'll hold up the cover so you can see it. As soon as I find the camera, there it is.
Yeah.
And it's on my Kindle, and I've read it a couple of times. It is a book written in a time period that was reminiscent to me because I grew up in the same time period that this book was written. And I was young at the same time. The difference is this is about a crime, a true crime that happened in London in the 70s, mid 70s time period when I was a young boy. And at the same time, we were going through a similar case in Atlanta, where they had kids being killed in Atlanta. And so this is a mystery, which is it's like an alternate history, if you want. It's a story which puts a character in the middle of this crime, and they're going to help solve the crime that was happening in the 70s, where all of these young boys were disappearing in London. And it's a really good story. It has some paranormal components to it. It does deal really well with the true crime aspect of the story and the history that was going on at the time period. I think Mackenzie Brown does a great job of putting you in London in that time period, bringing together the conflicts that were happening at the time, as well as the crime that was going on. And I really enjoy the story. It's a good story. He's written other books as well, and he's available on Amazon for all of his books. But the book is Lost Boys, and it's book one in the Black Knight series.
His book Annie's War was really good too.
I never read that one.
That one we've got it.
Yeah, I need to read.
Yeah, we've got it, and that's about World War I, and it's true. It's part of his family history.
He does a great job with the historical fiction part of it and weaving characters into that historical fiction.
Awesome. Ro, how about you? Do you have a book and a beverage?
I have a beverage. How about that?
That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, it's it's getting near Christmas time, so every year around this time, I do this, and it annoys the wife to no end. That's not why I do it; it's just a bonus, really. Butterbeer. So I finally found a recipe that I really like, and I found that if you throw some butterscotch schnapps into it, that makes it pretty tasty and warms it right up and lets you get through those first couple of movies before those kids learn to act.
Yeah.
And when the cup's empty, you just refill it with butterscotch schnapps.
Yeah.
Do that, yeah. But if you're interested in the recipe, join my mailing list. I put out the recipe in my newsletter that came out Wednesday, but I can do it again. Send me an email. I'll tell you what it is. Or maybe I'll just put it in the chat. I'll do that.
Okay. And no book selection?
No, I don't read nearly enough these days, but that's a me problem.
So, okay, my turn. If you've watched these episodes and you know what my drink is, I bought a 12-pack in October, and I have one more left. So next week will be the last week for Corona. And then the lush that I am, I will move on to another 12-pack that will take me through February, probably into March.
Are you a fan of dark beers or ales?
I like dark beers, yeah. Killian's Irish Red is my all-time favorite, but I have trouble finding it. I have to go to the Kroger that's sort of near me, not really.
If you get a chance, if you can find any craft beers, the Highland Scottish Ale is really good. It's a brown ale,
nice.
And it's a brown ale. I mean, I can't say much more about it. It really is a true brown ale, and it's a really good option if you're looking for something crafty to put on your plan.
Okay. And then for my book, if this shows up, it is The Advent of Winter. One of the booktubers that I follow, he got 24 indie authors to each write one story. So it's like an advent, but you get a short story every day emailed to you. So the Patch Skin Woman is the first story in the series.
Oh, nice.
So yes, I kind of befriended him so that next year, if he does this, maybe I can have a story in there. But there's a lot of writers in here who I know, a lot of friends. So
good.
Some of them are really good, and I'm like, I don't know if I want my story next to theirs. But details. I'll worry about that later if that should happen. So
all right.
So, okay. Now we're time for the hard-hitting questions.
Okay.
TD,
I need to
explain this.
So what you're holding is one of our dice trays. Dice tray, valet tray. It's a portable valet tray or dice tray. If you're a game player or a role-playing game player or any dice game player, it is leather interior with a leather outside, which is, it's basically a nice 5-ounce leather dyed, in this case, brown. You chose a owl art, which we did a hunt for and found you exactly the owl that you were looking for. I've added a few more owls, so you need to get with me about some other options for other things. But it's just one of many of the leather items that we make at our business, Twin Cedars Ranch. And if you're looking for a dice tray like that, we have plenty of them, and we do custom work as is demonstrated there.
And KT, you also make jewelry, correct?
Yes, I do. I do chainmail and also just regular charm earrings. But what I really like to do is chainmail, kind of like the necklace I have here, which is part chainmail, part cut chain. I originally bought the charm at a Ren fair a few years ago. It's got a Viking rune on it. It was the E. And I didn't like the little string they gave me to put it on. So I decided to make my own necklace.
And you went with chainmail.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
You said I need a new string. I'm gonna do chainmail.
I'm going to do chainmail. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. This particular weave is called helm chain, which is a nice kind of flat weave. It's really good for necklaces or headpieces because it lays flat against the skin. There are other weaves that are more three-dimensional. They kind of make a box out of rings. I really enjoy it. I've started out crocheting a few years ago, and this is essentially crocheting with jump rings. So,
It's good that you make something flat like that because your husband was in the Navy.
No, I was in the Tennessee State Guard for 11 years.
Sorry, you said
That's okay. I said warrant officer, and that often drives people to the Navy.
Right. Sorry.
Mhm.
It works with the Army too. It's fine.
But he was in the Tennessee State Guard, which is purely deployed within the state. They can't be deployed anywhere else. They're part of the state of Tennessee. And he served there for 11 years and just recently retired. And we use the same laser that we used to do his dice tray to do these powder coated mugs.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is when he did special for himself. If at first you don't succeed, go back and do it the way Chief told you to. So this is one that he really enjoys. But we do like 30-ounce tumblers. We do the mugs. Mugs are very popular. We started doing the 20-ounce skinnies as well. And those are a lot of fun to do. And it's just one more thing we can do with the laser as long as we've got the rotary working that lets us engrave curved surfaces.
Yeah.
So we've enjoyed that. But we loved doing the dice tray for you, Mike. That was just so much fun. And because it was special to you in your books.
So after we're done with this interview, I'm going to have to get with you. Another new series I'm going to write is going to have a female dwarf paladin who shaves her head and her beard because she has daddy issues. And I've just decided that she's going to have a little circlet that she wears. It's going to be made out of chainmail with a rune. And so I'm going to have to get with you so that I can have said thing made.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, we'll after the interview we'll talk.
This is why you do this show, isn't it, Mike? You just do this so you can meet people to make you stuff for your book.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I also, the problem with going to Comic-Cons is you buy chainmail.
Yeah, the scale mail.
Yeah. So this is why I don't make money at Comic-Cons, because I spend it on other people's stuff.
Yeah. Did you get that
In this
from
case,
Chain
I
Nerd?
traded my books for it, so you know.
Did you get that from Chain Nerd?
I don't remember the guy I got it from, but he was really excited to read my books, and I was really excited to have this because
That was
I
a
don't
good
play
trade.
D&D, so I need a dice bag holder that I don't use.
Okay.
So,
Chain Nerd is another group. It's a guy and a gal from Nashville that also they kind of do the circuit the same way we do, and they do excellent work. I love to see them. Chain mailers don't usually feel competitive. We usually just, the craft is not dying. Yay, we're glad to see you, because we all do. We specialize in different kinds of jewelry.
right.
So they're always great. So if you ever run into Chain Nerd, give them a look too.
It's kind of like authors. Everybody does their own take, so there's no reason to
Exactly.
get side-eyed and looking at people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The idea that someone's going to steal your story is an old one, which I tell people all the time. I've never met anybody who's out to steal my story. I might inspire them. I might, we might have the same idea, but we won't take it the same direction. We won't write it the same way. And two stories side by side, same premise, will create two totally different books and probably sell for both authors. So the idea that someone's out there trying to steal your story, if you want to share your idea with somebody, share it. Have that conversation. Don't be afraid to talk to other authors about your book. They're not trolling for your ideas.
And there's only so many ideas out there anyway. I saw something, I think it was on TikTok, where somebody said, Harry Potter is really just Star Wars, right?
Yep, saw that.
A young boy who lost his parents, who lives with his uncle, who doesn't want to tell him anything, and they just started laying all this stuff out. It's like, okay, fair enough.
Yep.
But they're two very different things, but they're the same story.
Mm-hmm.
So I I've had a couple people come and like, they like, how do I publish my book? And I'm like, well, are you done? What's it about? And they're like, I can't tell you. And I'm like, listen, I have a 7-book series I'm in the middle of. I have 3 other series that I want to start. I don't have time to steal yours.
Right.
I don't have time to take your story and write it before you publish it. Please go publish your story, whatever it's about.
Yeah. But that's always. Go ahead.
I felt the same thing when I was first starting out. When I started writing, I was taking creative writing classes in college. And the one thing you learn about, there's 2 things you learn in creative writing classes in college, and that is how to write something quickly from a premise, a prompt. And then the second thing that you learn is how to take criticism.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things I learned best was how to go through a workshop, how to let somebody critique your work, how to sit there and listen and accept that feedback, realizing that they may not have it perfectly right, but their feedback's going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
Everything someone says about your story is beneficial, good, bad, or indifferent. Learn how to take it. And that's one of the things I learned. But the other thing while I was working with these authors was the fact that you get energy and feedback from another author when you talk about what you're writing. Although I did have one guy tell me during a conversation about my story, he said, "Stop telling me about it, go write it." Because I was spending an awful lot of time telling him about the story. And he said, "Look, it's not written. Finish it.
Yeah.
Don't tell me about it. Finish it." And he made a good point there. Go finish that story.
How did you get started?
Let's see. When I was about 9 years old, so that would have been 1979, I wrote
1970.
Say again.
1970. Woohoo!
That's right. Yeah. I wrote a 3-page story that was the beginning of a book that I have never been able to finish writing. I've completed it once. It's crap. I've gone back to rewrite it and revisit it. I workshopped it with Ann Crispin at a workshop at Dragon Con, and I actually workshopped it with her twice.
I loved her.
She was a great workshop person, but she gave me some painful feedback about it, and she said it's extremely derivative, and she was right. Now I left that and I wrote other stories, but the time frame from those first 3 pages to having that workshop with her was 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, right at, well, would have been 16 years, about 16 years from the time I wrote the first page to when I took that story to her to workshop it. And so I played around with writing that whole time, but it really wasn't until after that experience where I sat down and said, you know what, I'm just going to write a different story. I'm going to leave this one behind and I'm going to go write something that I'm not so invested in. Because that story I've got a lot of investment in. And I would tell people, if you've got a story like that, sometimes you may have to just box it and set it aside for a little while and come back to it when you can look at it with fresh eyes. Because being way too into that story means you can't really see it well enough to fix it. I've completely changed the premise on that story. Well, I haven't changed the premise. I've completely changed the mechanics of it. I've changed the world. I've changed a lot of the foundation. The story's still the same, but there's a lot of things that I've done to improve it since that critique. So someday you might actually get to see that story.
And what books do you have out now?
So I have 4 books out now. I have 2 books in the series Legacy of Dragons, Legacy of Dragons Emergence and Resurgence. It is a contemporary fantasy set starting in 2012, and it actually starts in a manor on a mountain in East Tennessee, which is just up the road from here in Signal Mountain. It's actually on Signal Mountain, and you've been here, so you know a little bit about where Signal Mountain might be. Yeah. But I set it in a specific location on Signal Mountain, And then it spreads out from there because it's a global story about what happened to dragons 1,500 years ago. In my book, they disappeared, but dragons exist in every civilization. Every civilization out there has a reference to dragons in it. So I play with that. And the idea is they disappear. And in 2012, they come back. And that's where emergence kicks in. And then resurgence is the continuing story dealing with the relationship between my main character and her fiance. And they're at odds about what happened to the dragons. He blames the humans, and she has a different perspective on it. So that's the 2 books in that series. The 3rd book will be, when it's finished, titled Alliance. So Legacy of Dragons, Emergence, Resurgence, and Alliance. While I was working on those 2 books and getting them finished, I wrote The Queen's Yeoman, which is a mid-grade novel. It's written at about the same age range as the first Harry Potter. And I see it aging similarly, like Rowling did with that series. It's a smaller book. It's about 10 chapters. It's not a novella. It's bigger than a novella, so it is a novel, but it's not a big novel. But I wrote it as I have a young lady who's a non-familial niece. So she's not related to me, but she's my niece. And we went on a trip together, and she introduced me to one of her imaginary friends. And so I went home and I wrote, over a period of 10 weeks, I wrote 10 chapters, which was a story about her imaginary friend named Sandra. And Sandra's the main character in The Queen's Yeoman. It's a interesting tale about magic in the real world and how she deals with the death of her grandmother. And the 4th book is an adult action adventure novel, adult action adventure fantasy novel, titled Guardian Unmasked. It is a high fantasy novel in that it exists in a completely different world with a completely foreign setting, with a completely different magic foundation. And in it, there are realms which surround an area called the Dragon's Spine. And the Dragon's Spine is a dangerous area because all of the realms around it push their disreputables into that area as punishment or just to get them out of their society. And because of that, this has become a wasteland of humanity. And getting across this Dragon Spine is difficult to begin with because, based on its name, it should give you an idea. It's a very mountainous and rugged region, and it resembles the spine of a dragon. And it's hard to pass. So there are these caravans which travel from realm to realm, and they are usually guarded by contract by a group of guardians. The guardians promise to protect your caravan as you cross the Dragon Spine. This story is about one particular guardian, which is challenged with a mission, an impossible mission. There's the theme. Listen for it. To deliver a young lady who has been betrothed to another realm's prince as part of a contract, and he has to deliver her across the spine. The challenge here is that no one wants her to make it. So it is a true adult action adventure novel. It has all of the things that an action adventure novel would have in it. And it's a fun read. I enjoy it. And there will be more in that series because I defined it as the Guardians series. When will I write one? I don't know. It just depends. And those are the 4 that I have out there, and I could talk forever. So I'll stop.
Really quick, TD, about how many books do you put out a year?
Oh, wow. 0.1.
Okay. So it's not books per year, it's years per book.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I mean, originally my books were coming pretty rapidly, but since then I've slowed down considerably.
It's not to slow it down, though. You also get better at your craft, right? It just takes longer to do it when you start realizing, oh, hey, I could, do this with it or that with it or whatever it is.
It's nice of you to put it that way. Yes.
I'm here for you.
The reality is, and I'll be completely honest, I wrote Legacy of Dragons as a book in a month challenge. I challenged myself, and I wrote a contract with myself to sit down and write 400 pages in a month. And I did it. I wrote 400 pages in a month. In my mind, that was a book. And it could have been. But the reality was, when I went back and I did the review and the edits on that book, what I realized was I hadn't written a book. I had written a really deep outline. It was more than an outline. It was actually many pages per section, but there was so much more that needed to be fleshed out. So when I went back and I fleshed it out, I wound up with 3 books. The reality is, I published the first book. I went back and I cleaned up the second book based on the publishing of the first book. And when I had completed the second book in the series, and I went back to start working on the third book, I realized that the ending of the book needed to meet up with all of the improvements and changes that I had made with the first 2 books, because my ending was a little weak compared to where I had taken the story on the first 2. So I'm dealing with that continuity that I've created in that third book. So there's a challenge there. And the reality is, I've just been lazy about it.
We've all been there. Some of us are still there right now.
Some of us played Birth of the Federation, which came out in '93 rather than right. So
Civilization. I mean, that came out a long time ago too. So
Civ 3. There you go.
Yep.
KT, how about you?
Oh, let's see. Well, like him, I started out at the age of 8 or 9. Basically, once I'd been reading for a while and wanting to write my own stories, I was a big fan of Twilight Zone reruns. So I was always writing short little Twilight Zone-y kind of stories where, I mean, if you're an experienced reader, an experienced Twilight Zone fan, within the first paragraph, you know how it's going to end. But, you know, I think we all dream of writing those kinds of twisty stories. But later on, it was about 2005, I guess, I started writing fan fiction, because I've always been a big comic book fan. I was a huge fan of the Teen Titans, especially the Marv Wolfman, George Perez run in the 80s, which was my teenage years. Huge fan of those. And then I hit my mid-30s, discovered that fan fiction was a thing, and said, I can write this. So sat down and started writing a fan fiction story that turned into an epic that I only just finished a couple of years ago, starting in 2005, ending about 2021. So there was long periods of time between the chapters.
And that was fan fiction of what?
Fan fiction of Teen Titans comic book. And then I've written a little bit of a Marvel one. Oh, by the way,
a fan of might have come and gone.
I'm sorry?
So you got to be careful with that, because if it takes that long, the thing that you're a fan of might have kind of come and gone in the popular consciousness. And
yeah, it did. But what I was writing it based on the 80s version anyway.
Right.
So, and the Teen Titans cartoon had come into vogue and kind of faded out in that time. So you're right. But it was a lot of fun to write and took a long time to finish. There's like, I forget how many, 200,000 words or something by the time it was finally finished, because it was multiple stories, shoved into a series. But that was how I got started in writing fiction. So I thought, well, I need to branch out and do something not quite as fan fiction-y, but if you take a look at what I have written and published, it is still kind of fan fiction in a way, but it's of stuff that's in public domain, so it's okay. My series is called The Nemo Paradox, and the first book in it is called 20 Million Leagues Over the Sea. So that kind of gives you an idea of where this is going.
You're going to make me look up how much is a league, aren't you?
Yeah.
But it's kind of a mishmash of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and War of the Worlds, leaning more heavily on War of the Worlds. But it answers the question, what happened to all that technology that the Martians left behind when they died at the end of War of the Worlds? Lots of people have actually written that story. This is my particular version of it. 20 years later, we took that technology, grabbed a little bit of Captain Nemo's technology, put it together, made a ship to take the fight back to Mars, to eliminate the Martians. So the first book of the series is about the trip to Mars. The second book, The Mysterious Planet of Captain Moreau, is about what happens on Mars. And the third book, which I am in the process of writing now, The Invisible Woman, talks about the aftermath of what happens on Mars. So no spoilers, but I'm still working on that third book.
And I get to sell her books when we're in the booth, so I'll go ahead and throw in what I say about this. If Jules Verne and H.G. Wells had a child, this would be it. This would be their child. And the interesting thing for me, because I write fantasy, and I write fantasy because I don't like to do research. I like to make stuff up. So I go off and I make up my magic. I make up the stuff that I do. But she did some research, a lot of research. And when we talk about women in science, and we talk about science at the turn of the century, and that is the 1800 to 1900 century, when we talk about the science that was available at that time period, she did the research, and she presents realistic technology at the time that could have taken us to Mars at the time. If they could have and even the launch system and all of the things were possible at the time. You're talking about a steam-based environment, but still the ideas were on paper for the weapons that she uses, that the engine that she uses.
Yeah.
So
it's loosely based on the Vasmir engine that someone's designed.
Yeah.
But
and the Tesla pistol and the
the Leyden pistol. Yeah. So I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun with some mysteries and the big question as to the truth behind the invasion. Why did the invasion actually happen? And the biggest part that will be answered in the third book. So I've had a lot of fun writing it. A lot of fun researching it. Learning when to stop researching and start writing has been part of my problem.
I was going to ask you about that. Doing research on stuff like that, do you find yourself kind of going down, the ancient alien flat Earth rabbit holes, just trying to kind of find some interesting little nugget that you can toss in there?
Yes, I've read a lot of those. I've read a lot about quantum entanglement because that comes into play. A lot about the Vasmir engines, Mars itself, because I had to learn some of the geography of Mars to do this.
Little geography and chemical makeup.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Ancient Aliens. I will say, if you like it, don't watch too many episodes in a row because it'll make you paranoid. So, but yeah. And I wanted to say I saw Philip's comments pop up there. Thank you, Philip. I appreciate it. And the cats like you too.
Yep. And this is Ergo, and this is Smokey. There's a little white one that's high. Oh, she's right here.
She's right there. Rascal's asleep.
Rascal doesn't like people, so she hides behind us down here.
She hates me.
She'll let me pet her, but that's about it.
That she is definitely Rascal's his cat. Ergo's my cat. Smokey kind of floats between us. Yeah.
They must make writing a bit of a challenge. I'm sure they tried to help you type.
Well, they're good editors.
Well, I can tell you a story about that. I told you I did the book in a month challenge. And that was, now this was back when we had a different cat. Her name was Hobo. Yeah. And I would get up at 5 a.m. and come into the kitchen right here where we're sitting. And right in this bay window, I had put a desk in. And my computer was at the desk, and I would come in every morning and I would write for 2 hours. And then I would write again for an hour at lunch. And then I would write for another 2 hours in the evening, because I had made this promise to myself to complete these 400 pages. I had a schedule. I knew how many words and how many pages I needed to finish to get it done. And I was determined to get it done. So one morning I had come in here, and I don't remember if it was Act 1, 2, or 3 that I was writing on, but somewhere in the middle of this book, I was sitting here in the kitchen writing. I was just going. I write with headphones and music, and the headphones were on because I'm in a house where I could wake up someone at 5 a.m. So I nicely put headphones on and work with headphones. And so I'm sitting here listening to my music and I'm writing, and all of a sudden I hear this odd noise. It's a crunching noise, and I take off my headphones and I look to my left, and Hobo was an outside cat that likes to be inside during the cold weather, and she was pretty much a wild cat. She hunted.
She was 90% feral.
And so I had to thank her when I looked down and noted what she was doing. She was enjoying her breakfast, which happened to be a mouse that she had caught. And she was sitting there with this mouse in her mouth, crunching on this mouse with the tail hanging out, looking up at me like, "Winsel?" It was a disturbing moment, but I share that one with anybody who wants to hear it, because I have cats. I live with cats. And mice are going to happen when you have cats.
Anytime we had guests at the house, she would think, "Oh, you need extra meat."
Oh, yeah.
And we'd go find it.
They're very kind like that.
Yes. Hobo was a great cat. I had a lot of adventures with her.
And we've had a few cats.
Yes.
We've had a few.
Currently, we have 8.
Our cats are too lazy to catch mice.
Yeah,
like
Philip's
Garfield,
been
I
there,
think.
done that. Yeah.
Oh, there's another one trying to get up
Oh,
here.
Rascal's awake.
So, KT, are you also a book per year or a year per book person?
I am years per book. Before the pandemic started, I was about 3 years per book.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm getting on to year 4 with this latest one. Is something about the whole
Chainmail?
lockdown, everything just threw me off. So I'm trying really hard to get it done. But yeah, I'm years per book. I don't write quickly.
You guys are doing so much other stuff too, between the leather
that is
work
true.
and the making the cups things and the chainmail. I mean, chainmail is not a fast process by any means.
Well, it depends on what I'm making. I've not made armor yet.
Yeah, I was going to ask. That was going to be my follow up to that. Is
okay.
How have people started asking you for the like the whole breastplate kind of thing?
Oh, okay. No, not yet. And usually it's just smaller pieces like the jewelry. And if you see people writing about chainmail, if they spell it with an MAIL, that tends to be the armor. If they spell it with an MAILLE, that extra LE at the end, they generally mean the jewelry. Mm-hmm. And I tend to do it with the LE. Someday I will be doing it though. But yeah, these don't take very long. I can do about 1 inch in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Of this particular weave. So I've kind of timed it out so I know how much to charge for labor on different pieces by how long it takes to do an inch of a particular weave. So
now, if you're going to do that, when you sell your books should cost about $600 each.
Yeah, they should.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, if you're pricing out the book on the hours spent, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I never would. However, I will say smashwords.com is one of the big ebook sites, and tomorrow they're having their annual end of year sale, and there will be thousands and thousands of ebooks by indie authors, either really, really cheap or free, and 20 Million Leagues will be free, and the second book will be half off ebook there. So if anyone wants to give that book a chance, you can try it out for free.
And is that a one-day only sale?
It's through it's through the end of the year. So it starts tomorrow and goes through the end of the year.
Tomorrow is the 15th.
20 million leagues above the sea?
Over the sea.
20 million leagues over the sea.
So I have to put out a December newsletter, and I like to always include when books are being discounted. So I will definitely add Smashwords.
Yeah, smashwords.com.
To that and mention, maybe even shout out a certain book.
Okay. Ooh, okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, they recently merged with Draft to Digital.
Yep.
So if any of your listeners have heard of Draft to Digital, they're now becoming a single company. Yeah. Draft to Digital more on the publishing side, Smashwords more on the bookstore side. They each had their own strengths. So
When you
whenever
promote
this
your free
woman
book,
is,
please
sorry?
tell them that we've just promoted Smashwords and Drafted Digital here at, at no cost to ourselves.
Okay.
And hey, Ro, did you find out how long a league was?
3 point something miles.
Okay.
Like 3.4 or 3.5 miles. Yeah, I left that page already.
Oh well.
Sorry.
Left us hanging.
What's that?
Yeah, the title gets a lot of attention. Yeah.
Yes.
And I love going with Mysterious Planet of Captain Moreau too, because it's still a blend of Wells and Verne. And that came out of when I was a kid. I always got Mysterious Island and Island of Dr. Moreau mixed up because I always called it the Mysterious Island of Dr. Moreau. So in this case of my book, I have a captain named Captain Moreau, and that name gets explained in the book. He's not related to Dr. Moreau, but there is a connection between the two.
Like Mr. Spock and Dr. Spock.
I'm sorry?
Like Mr. Spock and Dr. Spock.
Yeah. Two completely different people. Yeah. But as in Mars being the mysterious planet of Captain Moreau. So, but Moreau's a good guy in this one.
Hey, when you do that kind of thing, where you're taking something from a book like that, I think that the very initial response to that is, "Oh, what a great way to do it!" Right? Half of it's already written for you. Which, how difficult is that to take something that's already out there and use it as a base for something that you're trying to do? I mean, I would think it would almost be more difficult because you have to pay attention to the source material, while at the same time shifting it enough into your own material to make it a new thing.
Yeah. Oh, one of my advantages that I had was I'd already written fan fiction, which means you're already playing in someone else's sandbox.
Yep.
And I try very, very hard when I write fan fiction. A lot of people just stick to the basics, and they kind of, depending on the kind of fan fiction they're writing, the flavor of it, are a little freer with the details. I try to stick with as much of the history as possible while still extending things forward. That was a real advantage in going, which I'm basically doing the same thing with 20 Million Leagues Over the Sea, but I'm also setting it 20 years in the future. And I'm very careful about any characters carried over from those days. They're either dead or I wait some time into the story to introduce them. Also, some historical characters, which I feel like you have to be even more careful with, because you're talking about people that have descendants and families, and you don't want to make them mad. I try to make sure they're mentioned, but they're always off stage. Like Tesla is actually an offstage character. He has a role to play, but I will never show you him because he was a living person. That's one of my rules in writing this series.
And I think one of the things that you said actually resonates with me with how do you do that. And to answer your question, Rose, it's you. If you're a fan of the thing, you know it really well. Like War of the Worlds. There's so many War of the Worlds stories, follow-on stories, musicals, movies that you can lean on and ask yourself, what do I want to use? What do I like? What do I not like? And some of them are good. Some of them are bad. But the reality is, if you're a fan, you know them. You know the pieces. And you are asking, which part do I want to include? That research is actually fun when you do it, because you like that thing so much. And that's what, in my mind, when we and so she wrote the story. And
you can tell how we got the idea, though. Go ahead. Tell her we got the idea.
Well, we were on a trip to the Space Center in Huntsville, right? No, it was somewhere else.
We went to Margie and Ned's.
Oh, that's
party.
Right. It was in Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were on a trip. We stayed the night. The next morning we got up and we went to breakfast or lunch. I think it was lunch.
Breakfast.
It was breakfast. And we were just talking about ideas. You know, we were brainstorming ideas about stories. And the two of us have never written a story together. However, this one started as one of those stories that we could theoretically write together, because we really framed out the idea for it sitting at a restaurant, just talking about brainstorming, you know, what would you write? What's a good idea to write? And we brought together this concept of a steampunk revisit to War of the Worlds. What happens after the aliens have died? And sorry if I spoiled the story for you. War of the Worlds, but, after the aliens have died in War of the Worlds, what happens? What do we do? And the human propensity is to take the fight back to them. We're going to go back and fight them. We're going to attack them for attacking us. So that's where we started. And we had this, we drew out some of the base characters, some of the base technology. At the time I was working on book 2, I think book 1, I can't remember. And I didn't feel like I had the time to put into writing the story, but you took it and wrote it and did a great job with it, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you.
Better than I think we could have done together, honestly. The way we are as a couple, she needs to write her books. I need to write my books, because co-writing books would be spelled DIVORCE, I'm afraid.
I was going to bring that up, but I thought maybe I shouldn't.
No, it's a fair conversation.
It's a fair question.
I like how you just did that.
Yeah.
And anybody who watches this in the future, go back about 45 seconds and listen to what TD just did there. The lovely little compliment he just paid to get himself out of a very sticky situation. That is something that you can only pull off that smoothly after you've been married a long time. Well done, sir.
27 years.
Your house must be two writers in the same house. I'm assuming you don't entertain a lot.
No.
No, we don't actually. No.
You know, I can just imagine like 2 little desks face back to back, and just the sound of typing is
if you were in our office, you'd be able to see it, because her camera would be on, my camera would be on, and you'd see my back in her camera and her back in my camera, because we literally are back to back.
And the wall of books.
A wall of my books, a wall of her books, and a wall of our books.
Yeah.
You are really selling the idea of being a writer here.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You have to mention the 8 cats.
Yeah, they're there, but they're never allowed in that office.
Yes.
It's your writer starter kit.
Yeah, we gotta leave them somewhere.
A minimum of 2 cats. No fewer than 2 cats, because they
We've
get
got
lonely
5, so what am I talking about?
if they're just one cat. We also use Dragon Dictate from time to time. You know, sometimes it's easier to dictate the
Do you
story.
find it is really?
I don't.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've tried it numerous times, and I've never gotten the dictation down well enough to where I feel it doesn't create what I consider to be polished enough text.
You do have to edit it quite a bit afterward, in my opinion. But if you just need to rattle it off,
I did a recorder. I did one of the things I did like about Dragon was it allowed me to use like a field recorder, and I could record into the field recorder, and I could bring it home and plug it into the translator, the transcriber, and it would transcribe from that. It did a pretty okay job of taking those ideas and turning it in. Again, when I was doing my dictation, one of the things that you have to do with Dragon is you have to give it punctuation. You have to tell it where to break the sentences, commas, all of that. And I didn't do that when I was dictating on the run. So it kind of decided where to put that punctuation, and it was not often right. So I had a lot of editing and cleanup to do. But the value there was I did get transcribed text from an hour commute or a 2-hour drive or something like that, that I could then come home. And the gold there was when I was doing world Bibles, you know, when you create worlds, when you create environments, there are just things you need to talk about, like backstory. And I find that dictating backstory into a recorder and then having Dragon pull it out is actually very useful, because then I can edit it later. I can pull it together later. But I'm a verbal learner. I learn through hearing. And believe it or not, dictation if you listen to yourself dictate, I actually learned from hearing myself say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now,
and
you said-
sometimes when
Go
it's
ahead.
coming out of your mouth, you hear if there's anything awkward or that needs to be restated or rewritten. It's when you hear it out loud, you process it a little differently.
Yeah.
And it is much easier to pick out, oh, I need to rewrite that.
Now, you mentioned during an hour or 2 hour drive, do you have full-time jobs?
I did. I did, and I will again. A couple of years ago, I stopped working my full-time job, focused on the business, and spent a lot of time doing leather crafting and building the products that we sell. I wish I could say that was a successful 2-year investment. We have improved the business, but it's requiring me to go back to the work environment. Interesting point I'll make about that is I worked full-time, and the whole time I was working full-time, I lamented not having enough time to write. And yet while I was working full-time, I wrote 4 novels. I quit working full-time, came home, had all the time in the world, and I haven't written a novel since because I was too busy running a business. So maybe when I go back to working full-time, I'll be able to run a business and write a novel or 2.
I need time to write and have to go back to work.
Say again?
Said you need time to write. You got to go back to work.
That's right. I got to
Yep.
go back to work. I need to get a job.
Yeah.
Got to write some more.
And when I'm home all the time, the cats think I should be worshiping them all day. So,
As cats do.
Yep.
yeah, as cats do. The Egyptians tried to warn us.
Yeah, everything the Egyptians did with cats was a warning.
Yeah.
So every one of those statues is a warning.
Yeah, but they're wonderful company. They really are. Ergo's just precious. And he is named, in case you're wondering about the name, after one of the characters in the movie Krull. It was a 1980s,
Yep.
mostly fantasy, touch of sci-fi movie. Had the glaive. They had
Scroll?
Kroll.
the Krull.
Krull?
Krull.
Okay. I think it's the same movie I'm thinking of.
They had the little 5-pointed, like,
Yeah,
the
glaive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Cyclops, and one of the characters was a wizard named Ergo the Magnificent, and he could change into animals.
Liam Neeson
So-
was in that.
And he changed it into a tiger at one point, which reminds us of the stripes on Ergo. So we decided Ergo the Magnificent was his name. So, and he's been a great cat. We've had him since we adopted him in 2010. He showed up as a stray. So we're not quite sure exactly how old he is, but he's around 13, 14 years old. But he's a great cat.
Mike, what you got?
Just want to put this up on the screen for everybody.
Oh,
You, Philip. Well done.
thank you, Philip.
Thanks, Philip.
We
We-
appreciate
we
that.
appreciate
And
that.
if you ever run into us at a convention, bring them. We'll sign them.
The cat?
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. Thank you. I hope. Go Cats. Woo-hoo. I
So-
hope you enjoy the stories, and please let us know what you think.
Yeah,
So, Philip,
we-
just to let you know, in the future sometime, I have a story in my head. And I don't know how it's going to come out. I'm just going to lay it out here for you. I've been working on this for ages.
The space squirrels.
Space squirrels, yes.
Space squirrels.
But the space squirrel story has morphed in my head to mutant animals in a biosphere story, and I'm working on the plot for it. But I now have in my head at least one cat character, and there will be a space squirrel. This is going to be like Space Marines and Watership Down. So
I have
just
been dying for
Space
him
Marines
to
and
write
Watership
this.
Down.
I want to read this story.
I almost hesitate to ask TD, but have you ever seen Red Dwarf?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. You need to go back. It's an old British comedy from the 80s.
Yeah.
The mining ship, the Red Dwarf, and the main character was put in cryogenic sleep for like a year as punishment. But something went wrong. He wakes up like a million years later.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
His only companions are a hologram of a guy he didn't like when he was alive, and a guy who used to be a cat, but over the course of a million years evolved into a human. Well, kind of a human. He still has a lot of cat characteristics.
yeah. Oh,
So,
man.
yeah. Do yourself a favor and go watch Red Dwarf.
And
Okay.
All right.
I have a recommendation for you. Wistful Ascending. It's by
Okay.
J.C.M. Byrne. Basically, it's like a Superman guy who has superpowers. The Drock came and took over the universe and took humans from Earth and gave him these superpowers, and now he's retired. And there's a whole backstory of how he got to retire because he did some very, very bad things, and they said, just go away. So he retires to a space station by himself, and he's just towing ships in to and from the docks.
Okay.
And then all hell breaks loose because, it wouldn't be a story if that didn't happen.
Of course
Yes,
not.
Of course
And
not.
they have space bears.
Nice.
The guy's imagination is amazing. I think he's 4 books into it now, the Hybrid Helix. And he's smart because he's like, I don't know how many books it's going to be. So it's turn 1 of the Hydra Helix. It's turn 2. So he can write as many as he wants. And he's never,
Absolutely,
Cool.
yeah.
Oh, that
But-
sounds like fun.
Wistful Ascent. It is one of my favorite books that I've read in the last 5 years. I mean, it's funny. He's an old washed up vet who just wants to be left alone, and life will not let it happen.
Oh, I hear you.
Hysterical.
Oh,
Sounds like it. I tell you, you said something, Mike, that I'll push on, which is, as an author, it's so easy to come up with a premise.
Yeah.
Right. I have a
Yes.
great character. I have a great idea. The point, though, is that character has to be put in conflict. That idea has to express itself in a plot.
Yeah.
And although you
Mhm.
might have this great premise of things you want to write, you don't have a story until you have a conflict. And
Yeah.
sometimes the conflict is the hardest thing to come up with, making
Yeah.
that conflict cool, making it fit within your premise. Because I can't
Mhm.
tell you, I can tell you the number of times I've sat down and just written down these cool premises, these
Mhm.
ideas, but none of them can turn into stories until I have a conflict.
and then you have to express that conflict in an entertaining way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the real art, I think, of writing, not just having the idea of the story, but how you tell it. What framework do you use?
Yep.
Is it a story told by a character in flashback?
Yeah.
Is it
Please no.
yeah, or is it like Dracula? Dracula was told in a very
I love
cool
the
way.
I love
the way
Dracula
it's told.
premise.
It's a mixture of journal entries and letters and newspaper articles. It's not really a straightforward narrative.
Well,
so much.
none of it is narrative.
Yeah.
All of it is expressed in written text, captured in
Mhm.
either a journal or a news
Mhm.
article or a
Like-
letter to someone.
It's like flipping through a scrapbook someone put together of all the information. So finding that entertaining way of expressing what happened is the real art of it. That's when you get a really good writer.
So I can tell you, I have, because I also too love to do research, to do research. And I have a premise, first contact where the aliens come in the solar system. I know who they meet. There's 3 aliens total. I can tell you the very stars that they're from because I've looked at the Kepler data and like, this is plausible. And I know everything about all the worlds, they're red dwarfs, but they high radiation, but they can mitigate. I do not have a plot to put this in to save my life. But I can tell you, those stars the worlds they from. I can tell you what they're like, what they want. They're going to meet the guy who is on American Samoa, who is the astronomer who finds him because he's out in the Pacific where there's no lights to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whose point of view do I tell this from? What is the, where is the
conflict? Who's the
conflict?
perspective? Yep.
Yeah. And I have no
Exactly.
idea, but I have pages of notes on this story that one day I will write.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
when-
that's frustrating too. I can't tell you. It's frustrating to have that premise, that idea, and it's like, I don't have a plot.
I want to write about this world, but what do we do? Or it's kind of like we just saw Godzilla -1.
Good movie.
Great movie. If you've not seen it yet and you like kaiju style movies, you must see it. It's really, really good. It's very, very Japanese.
Oh, it's in Japanese.
Yeah,
so-
you have to read the movie because it's all subtitles. But I think if they dubbed it, it would have robbed it of something.
Yeah.
There's something very beautiful about hearing the Japanese in it. But I mean, you could have picked any set of characters to tell the story of, lizard gets turned into a giant monster by atomic bomb attacks Tokyo. But they usually, in stories like this, even when it's kind of a Michael Bay style, they pick a group of humans to center on to tell that disaster movie through. And whoever wrote this movie picked an excellent
set of characters.
It's starts out with a kamikaze pilot who lands on an island and says, I can't go do my kamikaze mission, my suicide mission, because there's a problem with my plane. And that particular story, and there was nothing wrong with his plane. He just didn't want to do it. That kind of sets off the whole human part of the story. And that framework, by the end of the story, I'm just sitting here, waterworks, it's just beautiful. But it was a great framework in which to tell a monster movie.
Now that is good, right? But whereas you were just crying your eyes out at the end of it, I would still be sitting there going, an airplane malfunction shouldn't really prohibit you from being a kamikaze pilot.
Well,
it's not the issue.
You from getting to your target, but the thing was, there was nothing wrong with his plane.
Right.
And that kind of kicks off the whole sequence of events.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. That is an interesting conundrum that's brought up. I think in this case, it was a engine performance issue, which meant he wouldn't reach his target anyway. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
But I get it. No, I'm right there with you. It's like,
Well, and a lot of other people ask him that question too.
Yeah. So,
but it is a great way to tell the story. It was very well written. I highly recommend it if you like Godzilla style movies. It's one of the best I've seen.
I think because of the personal way they told it, and this is an author hint here. If you're a writer, I would say just pay attention to the way this story was crafted, because it is a kaiju story. Okay, it's about a big monster that's coming to destroy something. And it is pure kaiju. It is pure destructive monster. Mm-hmm. But the story of these humans involved in this kaiju story is such a well-written story that you're able to forget. You're able to invest so much in those humans that you really want the kaiju to lose. And you really want there to be a resolution where your human element is able to survive. It really created good audience investment, I thought. Someone may disagree with me, and I'd love to hear what other people think of it if they've seen it. But she picked a good one. And if you're an author and you're looking for how to build a human invested story where the audience invests in your audience, or your audience invests in your characters, this is a good example. Take the story apart from that perspective and look at what they did to create the human investment in the story. Because if you can have the biggest monster, the most destructive beast, the worst environmental problem, the horrible asteroid that's going to destroy the planet, but if you don't create characters that people care about, it doesn't matter how destructive your asteroid is.
You might have people rooting for it to get there.
Yeah, I mean, if you got people cheering for the asteroid, you may have failed. I really did.
Yeah. But yeah, another example of that would be like Aliens, where you've got Ripley, and you've got a really human story that is a little bit in the background, but it is also driving the plot in the way that she deals with the xenomorph. She had a child during the movie Alien, although she's never mentioned. She had a child she was coming back to at the end of their journey. And of course, in the 50 years intervening, the child grew up without her and passed away as an old woman because Ripley was in sleep for 50 years. And she has some really tough feelings about that. But later on in Aliens, when she meets Newt, who would have been about her daughter's age as a child, she develops very maternal feelings for her, and that is part of what drives her to protect not just Newt, but the other people that are left on the team from the xenomorph. And I think that emotional payoff that you get there is what really makes the story stick, makes it special.
It also makes it a little bit believable too when you can put something in there that people have a little bit of empathy towards.
Yep.
Yeah.
And understand is, this is a behavior that I've seen in real life, and I get this, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it is that empathy you're leaning on. You want the reader to be empathic about your characters. And again, it ties back to what I learned from my workshops, where the question mark was, if one of your characters met you on the street, how would they react to you? I mean, what would their reaction to meeting the author of their stories be? It's not going to be positive.
You probably punch him in the face
because you're putting them in some really bad situations.
Yeah.
You got to think about that.
So I saw a Facebook post talking about aliens, and they said, Aliens is a story when a smart woman warns all of her colleagues about the aliens. No one listens, and in the end, only her and her cat survive.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Jonesy was one of my favorite characters in both movies. Jonesy was great.
Well, I want to thank both of you and your cats for hanging out with us. I know they haven't minded because they've just been sitting there getting love for the last hour.
Oh,
As they deserve.
They've been very good, actually. I didn't expect them to be this well behaved.
So where will you all be in the near future, in the coming year? I know you said you're done for this year with shows, but next year, where will you be?
Mid-January, we will be at Chattacon here in Chattanooga. February, we will be at Con Possible, which used to be Atlanta Steampunk Expo. It's the same group, but they've rebranded, but still a steampunk kind of convention. And that's in Atlanta, mid-February. March, we're off. April, we'll be at the Huntsville Comic Expo. And May, we'll probably be at Metrotham. And that'll be the first half of the year.
Yep.
And by then you'll have groupies and they'll know where to show up the rest of the year, right?
Correct.
Yes, absolutely.
And our newsletter has an events calendar with all the dates and links to it too. So if you go to our website at twincedersranch.com, you should be able to sign up for the newsletter there.
And I want one testimonial for you guys, because I've been at a couple of shows with you, and they put all sorts of stuff out. I mean, they have a thing that says general store, and it feels like a general store, like you've just walked into a Cracker Barrel, except there's no food, and they have much cooler stuff than what Cracker Barrel tries to sell you.
Well, thank you. And
But it's all ambiance. Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Philip. I appreciate all your comments, Philip. It was great to have you here with us.
We interviewed Philip, 3 weeks ago, maybe?
I don't even know anymore.
Something.
Okay.
But yeah, Philip,
cool.
great guy, also has 2 books out. The third one is coming, I think, soon.
Okay.
Philip, I'm going to put you on the spot. When is the third one coming? Cassandra Rowe is the heroine of his series, so I can tell you that.
Okay, cool. Very good.
But, well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks,
We've enjoyed
everybody.
this.
I
can't believe it's been an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good safe holiday and happy writing.
All right.
January
And there's-
2024.
and Philip comes through.
Okay. All right,
Yep.
Philip, we'll be looking for it.
Cool. Okay, now this is where it gets awkward. I'm going to hit end stream, and it'll take like 5 seconds, so everyone waves and smiles awkwardly until it finally. It's an end stream. Okay, there we go. Smile.